School of English Language Teaching and Research at Kobe City University of Korean Studies. And we're so happy that we sponsored this great conference, and we really welcome you here. And our great staff, Dana Tatsuki, Dr. Professor Dana Tatsuki will introduce the next exciting session.
Thank you, Rico. Okay, so it's my great pleasure indeed to introduce Mr. Andrew Wright. I've been involved in language teaching actually for 30 years, since I was a child. And during many of those years, I've used books by Andrew, in fact, and I have some of them in my library at home, and I wish I brought them so that I could get an autograph. I was foolish that way. Anyway, Andrew is, of course, a storyteller. He's an ELT educator, and he's a wonderful person. I've got to know him a little bit better over the past few days. And I want to hand things over to him right away because his plenary is far more interesting than anything that I can say right now. Andrew.
We're in a situation where retired professors have come to me and said, when I was a young teacher, I was using your books. You know the story, I think, about the mice that were bothered by the cat. And they got together and they wondered what they could do about it. They were too frightened of the cat. What did we can't take it? Can we all attack it together? No. Somebody's got to do something about it. And then somebody came up with a bright idea. I know, let's tie a bell around the cat's neck, and then we'll know when it's coming, we can run away. And then somebody else said, well, okay, great idea. Who's going to put the bell around the cat's neck? Well, two mice decided to do that, incredibly bravely. One was called Hannah, and the other one, Laurie. Because what they did what most of us wouldn't dream of daring to do, which is to try to organize a conference. It's a big job, pretty frightening and overwhelming, and they've done it. The next thing is that what I love about this day that we've had, that I've had, has been this feeling of I'm coming from a great number of different places, like the primary school classroom or the university, linguistics department and so on. But we're all sharing very much the same kind of things. And several of you have said, overlapping in what we're saying, and you will certainly find that in my session, overlapping with what we're saying. The speakers have been saying what we yourselves have been doing in the classroom. So this is a lovely day of family sharing, I hope you feel. And this family sharing has gone on from the beginnings of time. The projection here is not very clear, is it? In the actual picture that I have, I don't know if it's one to show. We can see people sitting around the fire. So we can see just about. In the next. Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Yeah. Let's settle for that. That's a compromise. Yes, actually, it's a contemporary photograph because the one that the photographer was around in Paleolithic time. In early days, those early days, Paleolithic times. Next slide, please. Donna's very kindly offered to do this chart of slide changing. This is from Lascaux, you can see, approximately 18,000 BC, in France. You can go home and tell your friends that you've actually met and now actually went into the original cave. But now when you go into a reconstruction of the cave, on a fat, treading part of a rock. It's a brilliant idea. But look at the ease with which the artist has drawn that horse. It is astonishing, isn't it, with that one line. The line would be soot mixed with animal fat. The colour there, the yellow ochre, is the earth of the car park above. When I was there the last time, I picked up some of the earth from the car park, took it home in a sculpture like that, and I've used it for making paintings at home. Exactly this colour, isn't it nice? So from using the simple things that they had around them, they were able to draw that horse. Of course, they were looking at animals all the time. That was what they could do. But this is all we have from them, and how naturalistic that is. I wonder what sort of stories they were telling. I don't know. I suppose they could have been talking about the stories of the day's hunting. I suppose sharing information. Where were those horses? All the way down by the river or whatever it might be. Very practical things. And I'm led to say that they probably did because their drawings seem very naturalistic. So maybe their stories, their non-fiction stories, were also very naturalistic. I don't know. I believe that some African bushmen have been visited by anthropologists and so on, and the stories have been studied. They still believe that animals are not separate from them. They feel great closeness, almost an affinity with animals. Maybe in their non-fiction, they were telling stories. I don't know, I'm hesitating, but I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. What sort of stories were they telling? Oh, Dolly. I don't know if they still have it, but I found when I did last go on the internet for IBM, they actually have a section there, a research section on the use of stories in business. Amazing. So often people think of stories, and that's sweet. I love stories too, and they're into that, looking like a child. As if it's stories are for children, they're for all of us, aren't they? Including IBM. Excellent case. Yes, was it stories that old fiction, true stories, or imagined stories? Or both? I knew there's a British man from the last years of the British Empire. Gosh, keep telling you these things. I predate the quill. That's not quite true. But I was brought up on sea stories. And that's what I read as a child. Best of Home, Treasure Island, and so on. I'm made of the stories that I was told and read. And as Sir Walter Raleigh in his childhood being told the same stories, and he became a great seafarer. Next one, please. Nick, you were asking what's the story. For me, it's a narrative of struggles and a description of struggles. And when those struggles are resolved, the story comes to an end. Several of you have been hearing today have been saying that narrating is a major highway in our brain. I came across the research just a few days ago, and I'm not going to give you a reference, but some brain science has been studying some animals. He's been able to identify some of the flashes going on in their brains as being imagetic. I've never heard that word before, but images. Sequences of images. And he's putting forward a point of view that perhaps we, and I think one of you was also saying that we, before we began to tell stories orally and verbally, but perhaps experiencing sequences of images too. I love that idea. One of the ways in which we try to make sense of experience. Yes, please. So, the way my brain is working is the idea of 3 kinds of story. I'm sure in a month's time or 6 months' time, I'll have another 10 kinds of story. These are 9 kinds of story at the moment. So non-fiction, which we're around the good stuff. Fiction. Sorry, non-fiction, not the news. But because, journalists, BBC, CNN, they often begin the news by saying the top stories today are. It's not a homonym like barking, chicken barking the dog. They lead stories. They're very straightforward journalists. You know where you are with a journalist. I'll tell you the stories. The third one is the one that I think I need to elaborate a little bit on. What do I mean by that? It's not my idea. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard of no more. This is my family. My wife and daughter are on the right, and my big daughter now just 18, who came to Japan when she was 1. Yes, we did a tour of Japan for jobs, 19 cities in 21 days. And she was 1. And I just had a heart operation, and my wife had to carry the baby, the pram, and all the luggage. But she's a powerful woman. And this picture is taken at Whitby on the northeast coast. Half my family is from there, mother's side from there. And what a stage it looks like, doesn't it? It looks like a stage. But I've not taken a Shakespeare quotation, which I could have done here, but one from Canterbury Tales. My school. Seen in this light, isn't it incredible? The idea of the stage that we live on, the daily stage, is a living story. I had a classical education. What else could I have had in this silly building? I mean, what a theatre set. Sheffield. Sheffield, not really quite big, not quite at the front like Manchester. Sheffield in Yorkshire, Manchester in Lancashire. Sheffield wanting to be as good as Manchester, so it has to build a big school, even more classical than perhaps the Manchester Grammar School. That is a stage every day as a little boy. I was never allowed to go up these steps, by the way, nor were the ordinary teachers. Riffraff had to go through the 2 little side doors. It's all part of the way I was being brought up. I was being brought up in this. This was a non-verbal storytelling. You all have your own stages. Just 4 weeks ago, I was working in Malaysia. Knowing I was coming here and thinking about that third type of story, I photographed the main room for the plenaries. Well, we need buildings to keep the sun and the rain and the wind off us, that's true. But everything else is storytelling. Non-verbal is architectural and interior design storytelling. There's an orchestra at work in storytelling, not a solo instrument. mention, talked about very often by language teachers because language teachers have been studying words. So the fact that the instrument of words is actually part normally of an orchestra is strangely ignored by word people. Even the chairs have been dressed. This is storytelling, isn't it? And the great, beautiful candelabras there, the elaborate ceiling, this is storytelling. And this is very much storytelling. One day you can have a photograph, and everybody has to look happy. Everybody has to be smiling and doing this to show it was great. Our life was great. We were so happy. It was wonderful. You weren't there. I was. Facebook is full of that. It's awful. I'm enjoying myself. I bet your life is rubbish. By the way, these Islamic people, these Islamic girls, in every country, for the photograph, they have a photograph, so yes, and then they come up and they snuggle into me. I mean, really snuggle. And I put my arm on, and then the photograph, click, and you jump away. It's all part of, it's all part of the story that we live in, the story in that, which is built up by the values, perceptions, and behaviours, particularly in this third kind of story, but also manifested through the first two kinds of story, I submit. Chaucer and his Canterbury Tales. 24 pilgrims going from London to Canterbury on a pilgrimage, and Chaucer, as the writer, is the main really conductor of this pilgrimage. And he gets them all to agree that they should exchange stories. And they seem to remember that they have to agree which one will be the best story, and he or she would get something from it. They have to tell stories on their way. What a wonderful symbol for a journey, being life itself, and having to tell stories to go through. Interesting that the three kinds of story are all manifested within Canterbury Tales. Of course, the fiction stories, which each of them tells. But then, for example, with the wife of Bath, the amount of text that is about her talking about her own life, her relationship mainly with men. It goes on and on and on. It's like it is her real life. That is the non-fiction. Although it is actually fiction. It's non-fiction within fiction. But not short. Yes, when she's talking about men, by the way, she doesn't think much of them. And she married 5 of them. And they were all supposed to be gentlemen, or so she was told. Is what she says, or so I was told. They were all gentlemen. So I was told. Wonderful. We get a real feeling of this woman as a real person. And apparently at that time, that would be the 14th century, I think. Is that right? Nod your head if you know about these things.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Because I failed all my O-levels, so I have to keep looking at people who didn't. And a lot of people in ELT failed their O-levels. I think Alan Maley has been here, hasn't he?
Right, same thing.
He failed his 11 plus, which is pathetic. Anyway, right. So yes, back to it. In the 14th century, I think women in England were there was a possible route for women to be very, very powerful and really stick up for yourself, and she represents that. Interesting how the different characters within Canterbury Tales represent the kind of types that you could be. And some of them we can warm to, but the knight, for example, I can't warm to. This notion of being gracious and gentle and glorying in battle and murdering people and the gore of the battlefield, all in the same breath. I said, wait a minute, what do you mean about him being gracious and gentle?
when he loves chopping people up on the battlefield. I can't quite cope with that. There's a change of story map. So on the story map of people at that time, knights, yes, that they are gracious and gentle, and they glory in battle. Interesting. This idea of story map. Well, there she is. I've told you quite a bit about her now. She was a character. Yes, next one, please. And then Chaucer himself. Yes, next one, please. Do you think that's true? Yes. One of the uses of stories is to make other people. If it is the case that our minds are made out of the values and perceptions and behaviours that are given to us in stories of the three types, if that is the case, our minds are made by those things, then a lot of people are going to say, aha, that's the way I can make people. So we have been made by other people. We are being made. Somebody made the point today that if we remember anything at all, our brains have changed. So even if you're seriously old, like me, you can still be changing. We are being made by what would be the different kinds of people. The church, the military, education, commerce, everybody is trying to make other people. And they'll be doing it through stories of one of those three kinds. This is serious stuff, isn't it? It's not just entertainment. It's not just for putting the little child to sleep at night. We're actually making them. The notion of cuteness, for example, the way I perceive cuteness is abhorrent to me in the stories that I would want to give to children. I would no more want to give them cute stories than I would want to give my children artificial orange juice, rotting their teeth out. Little children being delightful and so on. Oh, don't tell me. I love little children. I was with some first graders. Was it yesterday? Where's Donna? That's not Donna. Yes. Don't put your hand up. It was yesterday.
Yes, it was yesterday.
I was with first grade children yesterday, and they were absolutely delightful. I don't want them to be cute. That's something else. If children spot that by being cute they can get things, that's not a good idea. So I would want in stories for children, I'd want the stories to be manifesting other values. And there was a session today which I couldn't go to, I think it's today or tomorrow, which is to do with, one of you is doing something on the moral content of stories. Is it you? Good. But this is such a central thing. We are making the children. And there's no such thing as a harmless little story. If it's got nothing worth listening to in it, that is a value. It's like saying, I never vote, I'm not political. That's a political act, is not to vote. You can't get out of it. There's nothing you can give to people which isn't affecting them. If you give them rubbish, you're affecting them. It's such a responsibility. God. Yes, here we go. Little Red Riding Hood. So in the 18th century, I believe, and that's the version that we normally get from the court, then the girls are stupid, the Little Red Riding Hood is stupid, irresponsible, and the grandma's such a fool, but they're saved by a man. So this is a patriarchal driven story. It's their problem. So the right to get raped. Had their warning, it's not the man's fault. He's just a man. Oh, could I stop for a moment and tell you a story? My favourite story from Stephen Krashen. I stayed in a hotel with him and got to know him at breakfast every morning. He told me a lovely story every morning. And this is my favourite story. There was once an old man who was walking down the road when he met a frog. And the frog said, "I'm not a frog. I'm a beautiful princess. All you have to do is to kiss me, and I'm all yours." He bent down and put the frog in his pocket. And out of his pocket came this muffled voice. "I'm not a frog. I'm a beautiful princess. And all you have to do is to kiss me, and I'm all yours." He said, "Listen, when you get to my age, it's more interesting to have a talking frog." Yes. Now, I really, this is on my story map. I've got to keep it up to date. It's like having a map for driving. You buy the latest map. So that little vignette is on my map. And when I go to another country, like in Istanbul and Turkey, I can't believe that the girls are so beautiful. I told myself that story. It's more interesting, Andrew. It's more interesting to have a talking frog. Now, another version of the same story was the girl who was at a Little Red Riding Hood, and she went in, she saw it was, of course, a wolf in bed, and she said, "Okay, don't leave me now, I need to go to the toilet. It would be disgusting to eat in the present state." "Ah," said the wolf, "you'll just run away." "No, you can tie a rope round me, and then pull me back in." She went outside, she tied the rope around the tree and ran home. That's a summary of the story. And the Liverpool Women's Group version of Little Red Riding Hood was Grandma and Little Red Riding Hood killed the wolf, of course, skinned it, made the skin into a coat, and took it in turns to wear the coat. Different ways of telling the same story, and the value system, perceptions, and behaviours are absolutely different, according to how you want to make people or explain life around you. Yes, next one. Maybe I'll tell you this as well as you read it. Second World War, not First World War, Second World War. My father was away, a soldier. House next door was bombed. And my toy car broke. And I said to my mum, "Mum, can we take it to the shop and get it mended?" My mum done it over. There you are. Made in Germany. Next, please. I put on What a Responsibility on the bottom. The other part is CNN. They actually said that. The stories we bring, and they said stories don't use. The stories we bring today are the world you will live in tomorrow. God, they're saying it. They know it, and it's true, to a certain extent. What a responsibility. So that's what I've been doing. And I want now to go on to comparing storytelling and story writing, insofar as I can. Remember, I'm not an academic. I haven't studied this. I'm just telling you what I think from the work I've been doing. Next. So the curtain opens. Next. And the first protagonist is not nice. Ronald Carter and Michael McCarthy's book, Cambridge Grammar of English. There we go. Spoken and written English. And bless them, they've said spoken and written English, not written and spoken English. They're lovely lads. But isn't that wonderful to have a proper grammar book of spoken English? And for me, it's not a coincidence that this book is there and that you, Donna, you've kindly invited me to this literature conference. And yet it's this repositioning of literature. It is a time for change, isn't it? I'm not seeing storytelling as being somehow the poor little brother for uneducated people. Next, please. I've got to say that I can't tell you all about storytelling. Next. I met a man who was trained. When I was in Japan, somebody told me, I think it was David told me. Yeah, you've told me, Donna. Sorry, Donna. Not with David. David, you told me I was here 18 years ago.
That's right.
And a Japanese storyteller came to me and he told me that he'd been trained for 16 or 17 years in this rakugo school. And he gave me a fan and a white cloth. This is the fan that he gave me. All that photograph's taken in Manchester and no, where do I live? In Hungary. Thank you, Judith. Prompting me, reminding me where I live now. And he told me that he told his story, so that would be perhaps walking up a hill. He makes a mountain, and then with the fan, he walks up the hill. And then with the fan, he can fly away, and so on and so forth. The rituals within those worlds of school storytelling are not mine. I'm just a person who tells stories in the natural way, untrained, without ritual, without traditions and so on. We have traditions. And Nick and I have learned such a lot from former storytellers, of course, but not school. How do I make this distinction? They're not schooled in the way that these people are. We wouldn't say, I've been trained for 17 years. We would say, as you've been saying, I've had the experience of being a storyteller for many years and learned a lot. So from that kind of naturalistic, if you like, storytelling, I want to carry on with my talk. Thank you. The first amazing thing for me is that words only exist if they're manifested through another language, a non-verbal language. Otherwise they don't exist, I don't think, apart from being electric flashes in the head. You hear my words through my voice, which is a medium all in its own right. And it can manifest the words. Or you see it, a sans serif face, through the language of typographical design. That is a language. It's not a slave. We have the word doorman. There's not even a hyphen between door and man. The guy is standing there with the door, and you don't know where the door stops. The man starts, and I didn't go into it. He's holding the door. That's his job. He's a doorman. Just an extension of the door. Words only exist through typography. In what ways is typography contributing to meaning? And the manifestation, the words that they're passing on. And the voice itself. What about that? We have such a short time. I would love to be doing this with you. I really would. But I'm going to take you through a huge lot of slides. We should be doing this. You should be playing with different ways of saying yes. For example, yes, yes. And you can see that going. Let's go on to the next one. Oh, I love you. No, excuse me, go back a moment. I love you. Well, you think we've set this up? I've had friends say to me at the end of a talk, Andrew, you sly bugger. You set that whole thing up, didn't you? And I think, no, it's just an accident. It didn't mean it like this. I didn't know they were going to change over. Where are we? Yes. Now, if I were to say to you, I love you, and translate it, You translate it. That's what it means. Does it? I love you. Oh, wait a minute. I love you. Does that mean I love you? Of course it doesn't. It means the opposite. It's just an amazing concept. The voice manifests the words, but is more powerful than the words. The meaning of the voice in that particular case is more powerful than the meaning of the words that are being manifested. There's a duet, and the words are the minor instrument. What a thought, really. I don't know why this, does it come up? I don't know enough about language teaching all around the world. I've never been in every classroom in the world. Do language teachers make much of this? Or do they just study language as words? It's odd that. It's just one instrument within a huge orchestra. Next one. When I'm doing my craft of storytelling workshops, I often give them this line because there's nothing in it. And I think one of you said, yes, in the last talk, Paul's talk, I think it was, it's not the content, but how you say it. It's not what she said that hurt me, it was the way she said it, you know what I mean? It's... I did that very well, didn't I? But I mean, you hear that all over the place. So, can you say this, if you can say this and grip people, then you can tell any story. That's right, isn't it? And if you have great content as well, then you've got both. I woke up this morning and opened the curtains. That's what I did. Next one, please. If we had time, I'd ask you to work in pairs and say all those sentences with the stress changing and talk about the way in which the meaning is changing. The same sentence, but just the voice adding, not just manifesting the words, but adding meaning to the words. Storytelling and story writing. This is what my subject is. You know all of those things. I think the word that's used is it prosody? Probably. Probably prosody.
Probably.
Yes. No. I'm going to work on those a few. I've talked about stress. Next one, please. And if this was a full, proper workshop, I would be going through each of the following ones that I'm going to be just showing you now. But you could be saying it in your mind. Choosing from these things at the bottom, how would you say, the wind whispered at the door, let me in, let me in? How would you say it? What would your voice do? The wind whispered at the door, let me in, let me in. Perhaps. I would love to do these properly with you, but come to Hungary, because I do craft it. It's not so far away. Next one. Up the dale, down the dale, over the hill and far away. Bum, ba, bum, ba, bum, ba, bum. Not wind whispered at the door. Yes. Yes, wait a minute, how's this going to... Yes. All right, next one. I love this poem. So you must all know this poem. It so much depends on the voice, doesn't it? I have just eaten the plums that were in the icebox, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious. So sweet and so cold. Right, yes, next one, please. Yes, next one. Yes, next one, please. Well, there we go. Just a little bit on typography, just for a few moments. What does, that's an M. So typography manifests the M. But what is that design? What is that language of the design in the typography? What is it telling us? I would love to do this with you, but I'm going to tell you what I think. It's rounded, it's informal. Don't worry, it's informal, don't worry. Come in, come in. It looks like a doorway. It's a warm yellow colour. Of course, at the bottom, I'm loving it. Without the G, it's informal. It fits in, doesn't it? Next one, please. The silver, showing us what? Quality, 100, 200 years of quality for posh people. Next one. Yes, written stories, perhaps in the Middle Ages. This was written, I think, it's called Ellesmere manuscript. I think it was made about the year 1400, shortly after Chaucer had died. And yes, here, it's not a solo instrument. We've got design and illustration, so maybe it's a duet or a trio playing together. Next one. And of course, in children's books these days, this is the walk of the little hen, and she doesn't know it, but some of you know it very well. Maybe one of you is referring to it in your talk today or tomorrow. I think I saw it referred to. She goes for a walk and she doesn't know that behind her is a fox who is going to get her. But on every page there's a problem for the fox. In this case, he jumps on the fork and it knocks him silly. But there's no reference to that in the text. So in this case, the story is being told by the pictures, as much as or more than by the text itself. But really, they're playing together. And if you can think of different kinds of instruments, contrasting in this case with each other. Next, please. We don't really, honestly, in most things, and what is it you were talking about, that little electronic book thing? Kindle, yeah. People aren't concerned about typography, they're only perhaps for clarity. You're welcome, yes, come in. Tell me why you're late later. It might be an interesting story, you never know. It could be. He's not the sort of chap that would normally be late like this, and drawing attention to himself. There must be. There must be. Just shut up, will you? Right. So, next up, please. And next one. I was careful to put in usually, because there are times when you pick up a book and it's not just the word you read, but it's the whole feeling of the book which is speaking to you. So I have to put in usually. Yes. Marceau, the great mime, just body telling of stories. And his face, his wonderful face. Now storytellers, like Mick here, who is a professional storyteller, he certainly, I was watching him today, he certainly uses his body. Not to the full extent of Marcel, because he has only got this one instrument, is the body. So he's got to do everything with that. What Nick is working with will be his words, the voice changing meanings as well as manifesting the words, and his body, and his drum. So I don't know what he's working with, but it's like perhaps a septet of instruments at the same time. So most storytellers aren't doing the full thing with their bodies. They will be doing little things. And it's your thoughts which must deck our kings. So I, as a storyteller, as an old man, I must be able to convey a naughty young woman, perhaps. Okay, Andrew, that's it. Stop it now. Nice. And the mime. When I did my last craft of storytelling workshop, I was so happy because I found in Budapest a man who was actually trained with Marcel. Can you imagine it? So we did our workshop together. That was just incredible. I learned so much. Exactly how do you hold a teacup? If you're going to be a storyteller, it's worth spending a little bit, forgive me, you're all storytellers. What I mean by that is if you're going to try to take your storytelling further and make more of it, then it is worth thinking about if you've got objects. If you're going to put a crown on your head, that's such an important part of the story. How would you pick up the crown? Or would you come down and take the weight of it and then pick it up, then realize you're not holding it so you can put it on your head? Then you'd try it out, and then there's it, and then moving to the side. I know, I just caught myself doing it. I'm moving to the side because you can see it more clearly. Or it should be right from the front. So up, and then down. Move my head into it. Yes, it's worth doing that, rather than just, I like that. I'm not a trained mime, but I've worked with mimes. We used to have Annie stay with us, Judith, and she was a wonderful mime. She was performing in Manchester and so on, and I did learn from her. And when she stayed in our house, when she walked across the kitchen, for example, she just walked like anybody else. When she walked across the stage in Manchester, you walked with her as you sat there. You walked with her. You could feel her walking. You moved your body with her. Well, that's just touching on one of the instruments in the orchestra of a storyteller. Next one. Yes, if we had time, we'd be working on this, but sitting, I want to look at something down here. So, a mime might move her eyes first. So, instead of moving her head, she might move her eyes, then her head, down. A little bit more quickly than that. But you feel the action is so digested that it's gripping. It's based on observation. I once saw a master mime with his students, and they were all peeling bananas. And I looked around and thought, oh, all peeling imaginary bananas. And then I looked at the master, and he was peeling it in a different way. Because he felt the tension of the skin as he had to break it at the top. And it was a break, and then a pull, and then down. And the students were doing that. They're being very, very particular with the body, with the words, with everything else. That's what we all have to do, isn't it? Next, please. Oh, dear. Okay, that's it. Never mind. We'll just... No, we'll go on. Next one. Chunking. You must all know about this. I've had to discover these things because I'm not a learner fellow. I've had to do. But I began to realize over time that punctuation, written punctuation, isn't necessarily applicable to speaking of a language. Sometimes it coincides. And this has been very important for me as a discovery, the idea of chunking a sentence according to how you speak it. Apparently Winston Churchill did this when he was working out the texts for his speeches. He didn't write them out and punctuate them for writing. He wrote them in chunks for speaking. It doesn't coincide with the written punctuation necessarily. This is a very important thing, I think, for the storyteller as opposed to story writer. Next one, please. Well, of course we can listen to, on YouTube, I suppose it would be, we can listen to him giving this wonderful speech. I'm not quite sure. I chunked that. Whether it's exactly like he did it, I'm not sure. I did it just from memory. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. Something like that. His chunking in that speech is very, very powerful. Very important, by the way, in Japan, teaching Japanese students and so on. Very, very important when you're telling stories to people who don't share the same language as you. And they're struggling just to understand, let alone pick up the expressiveness of your language. Chunking is so important. Yeah. You probably know this Molly Brown from the James Joyce. The long, long soliloquy. I think 2,000 words in that soliloquy, some incredible number of words, unpunctuated. And so you chunk it as you like. I was a flower of the mountain, yes. When I put the rose in my hair like the Andalusian girls used to. Oh, shall I wear a red? Yes. And how he kissed me under the Moorish wall. And I thought as well as of him, I thought as well him as another. And then I asked him with my eyes to ask again, yes. And then he asked me, would I, yes, to say yes, my mountain flower. And first I put my arms around him, yes. I better not read the rest. Just too much for him at this moment. It might be all you remember from the talk. So let's carry on. Yes, just a little slip in here. The notion of redundancy, which I've been told by linguists means repeating yourself. There you go. I've just done it. And when we're speaking, it's so normal you don't notice. But when you're writing, because I do write as well, I must not repeat what I've already said. It has to be hacked out, doesn't it? So that's the difference between storytellers, story writers. And that's also, by the way, an important difference, an important consideration when you're telling stories to people like I do so much, Nick does, all over the world, to people who don't have share your mother tongue. Redundancy is extremely important. Finding a different way of saying the same thing. Repeating yourself. Just 3 times. So reading a story, which has no repetition in it, is actually very hard for the listener. And that's why maybe you should consider not always reading stories to your students, but actually telling them. Because then you can build in this repetition, which helps them to understand. Yes? Yes, this is lovely. Thanks. And I think Nick mentioned that also in his session, the idea of stories within stories. And the Arabian Nights is famous for that. This is an ifrit. So you remember Scheherazade? If she could tell stories, then her new husband, the king, wouldn't kill her. So she told stories every night and told 1,000 stories. And she often told stories within stories. And when I read, I've got the latest translation, 2 huge volumes from Penguin. I laugh with delight we're being teased by whoever made those stories. I can see them doing it, teasing me, putting a story within the story, and then within the story, for example. This will be a summary. The fisherman casts out his net again and again, and then he gets a bottle. He looks at it, no fish, just a bottle. Maybe I can get something in the market. He takes out the stopper, and an ifrit comes out of this bottle, a gigantic creature, and said, "Good," he says. "Now, how do you want to die?" 500 years ago, I was going to come out of the bottle and say, "What can I give you?" But I've been in there too long, I'll tell you this much. The only choice you're getting is how you want to die. How do you want to die? And the fisherman said, "Have you heard the story about the 2 neighbours?" "No, I haven't." "Well, I'll tell you." "All right." "I'm not going to tell you because I've got to stop." What?
That is unfair.
That's unfair.
That is unfair. Absolutely.
It's called story teasing. Now, next one, please. When people are really with you in a story, and you know they're safely there, it's marvelous to deliberately remind them that they're in the classroom or wherever it might be, because you know they're there. That's lovely, mixing realities. Difficult to do if you're a story writer, because of course you don't know who's going to be reading, where they're going to be. Writers have their own way of doing that, but that's the way that you have as a storyteller. Next. And of course, having an object which is real, but is within the story. And that's wonderful for, not just for little children, but for all of us. Next. All right. So I'm telling the story. She looked into the room, but it was dark. Now, the words are third person. My body and my voice are first person. I am being the protagonist, but the words that I'm using are third person. Can't do that in writing. Next, please. Next, please. Of course, there's a beautiful relationship between the teller and the listener. We all know that there can be a beautiful relationship between the reader and the author, of course. Different, but very real for both. It's lovely to come across this quotation from a storyteller 2,000 years ago. Now if we can go to slide number 72. That's not the one before. There we are, the end of the story. And they all lived happily ever afterwards. And they all lived happy together until the end of their days, and so may it be with us. Put this ending in your beak and carry it away to the highest peak. Long tail, narrow way. I've finished, so Now say your say. And all were happy and gay. But to me who watched, they gave no thought nor pay. All right, so if you want to follow anything up, the website at the bottom is meant for you to go to just take things if you're interested. I'd love to go there. One of the many things I love about being able to live in this age of technology is that my room, which is full of all the things I've been doing in my life, I can put my room onto the internet. And so you can all come into my library and take my articles and everything that's there. I love that feeling. It's incredible. All my pictures are painted there too. There must be, I don't know, thousands of pictures. And 50 to 100 people go there every day. It's very nice, isn't it? What I really like, I'm waiting for modern technology which will allow me my hand to come out of the screen with a cup of tea. Sit yourself down. Do you like milk and sugar then? That would be nice, wouldn't it? Now, we're moving now already into the storytelling. And I'm the first storyteller, but I've eaten up some of my story time, so I'm going to just tell you a very short story and then pass on to the other storytellers. So I've just got a few minutes. And I'm going to take a non-fiction story. And I thought a lot about which story am I going to tell. And one of the things that I care about very, very much is, and Paul, and I love the idea that he's a blooming professor of literature, although that really shocked his family. They thought, what did they say? Where is Paul? He's not here. All right, I'll have to represent him. When they knew he got a job in teaching literature, his uncle said, what's that? Reading books? Why don't you get yourself a proper job? Anyway, this dear boy, what he's been doing as a professor of literature is saying, for heaven's sake, what we want is that people can enjoy great writing. Everybody. He didn't say the following. He didn't say, a butterfly is only a butterfly when it's flying, not when it's got a pin through the thorax with its Latin name underneath. You haven't got it. It's not flying. He didn't say that, but maybe he would like that. And so that's my theme in this little story. So I have the good fortune, because of this ELT business, of going to lots of countries, and I was in Sierra Leone, in Freetown, working with teachers and children. What a lucky man. And I stayed much in the house of the British Council English language officer. He invited me to stay in his home, which was very nice. So we had a super evening. He liked whiskey. We had a super evening with me drinking his whiskey and chatterboxing. And then it was time for bed. I went to bed, and as I went to bed, I heard music coming from somewhere in the night. No woman, no cry. No woman, no cry. I can't do it, but you know what I'm talking about. I won't do any more, but you've got the idea. I thought, that sounds incredible. I didn't know about that singing at that time. I didn't know who it was. I thought it was a local singer. And I said, it was one of those crossroads. You all have them. Which way are you going to go? All right, you can go on if you like. I said to myself, right, go to bed. Just go to bed. Go to sleep. Or go and find out what's happening. It's a crossroads. We have them so often every day. I had to get up. I went out. And my host was still having a last bit of whiskey. And I said, I'm going out to find out what that music is. He carried on with his whiskey. I almost fell over the night watchman, who was asleep on the balcony outside with his rifle. He half woke up, realized I was the guest. I stepped over his body. And then I didn't realize until I was out and down the steps how dark it was. There was no moon and virtually no stars. It was absolutely black, really. I couldn't see my feet. I managed to find my way to the road and onto the track outside. And lining the track, there were palm trees. And if I looked up, I could just see a slight difference of the palm tree leaves against the night sky, a very slight tonal difference. I couldn't see anything here at all, it was just total blackness. I couldn't see my feet, I couldn't see my chairs, but I could see that. And I could hear my feet on the gravel, sandy gravel. So I felt on with my feet and listened with my feet, and I saw that, and I just walked down, listening to No Woman, No Cry. Until I came to a little one-room cottage, you could call it. The door was open, and the bright light was coming from it. Strip lighting, no pretense of it being a romantic place. And I stood in the doorway and saw 4 or 5, 6 people slowly dancing, and men, more men, there were 2 women, and there was one teenage girl on the plastic sofa who was shaking all the time. And I learned that she had malaria, and she was just shaking all the time. And the others were just shuffling, very slowly. And there was just this bare feet, and there was just this slither and slap of their feet, very slowly moving. And no woman, no cry. And there were some crates of beer in the corner. I went in, and they didn't take any notice of me. So I thought, well, this must be like a cafe. So I ought to show that I mean to give them business. And there weren't too many of them, so I took out whatever it was, 8 bottles of beer. And I gave the lady of the house, Mrs. Ceci, I remember what she was called, S-E-S-A-Y. Mrs. Ceci, I paid her for them and gave them the beer. No one said anything particular. And then, well, I love dancing, so I was trying to dance. And as I was dancing, the smallest man who was wearing a suit, a brown suit, but nothing else. He had bare feet, no shirt on. It was just bare, and bare feet, but a suit. And he came and he was dancing opposite to me, and beautifully. And so I complimented him on his dancing. I said, "You dance so beautifully. I wish I could dance like that." And he turned round to be next to me. And he said, "Put your feet together. Put your left foot forward. Put your right foot forward. Put your left foot back. Put your right foot back." I did it, you see. He said, "That's it." And then I continued dancing again. I said, "That's not it." I said, "That's not it at all." His dancing was sinuous. It had contrapuntal pulls and tensions in it. He said, "That's it." Then there was another big, affable man. I think he was just wearing long shorts and a huge baseball hat and a bare upper body frame, a big, strong boy. And he said, in a very kindly way, he said, "Listen to the music, invite it in. Your body will dance, and your mind. Give your mind a rest. Let it dance." Now, stories. It would be so easy for us to see as language teachers, but stories are a technique for teaching languages. They are the golden goose. How stupid to have a golden goose, a goose that lays golden eggs, I should say. A goose that lays golden eggs. How stupid to kill it and operate on it to see how it makes golden eggs. All you've got is a dead goose. So if you could please put that story, the Freetown story, then that would be wonderful. stories are the goose that lays the golden egg. Let's have the eggs, not a dead goose. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Here's just a small token for us from Kobe City. Just some biscuits with memorial of Kobe. Thank you so much for your story. And
Lost yours.
I've lost my beard, yes. Yes. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin the performance gala soon, and so please, I wish that you would just keep your seats and let us continue on with the program. Those of you who are interested in staying for the performance gala. Okay, all right, okay.